Welcome back to the Sassy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Tans, and today we have a very special guest who goes by the name of Pablo Hepworth Lloyd OBE. Pablo, hello, welcome.
Hi, Tans. It's great to be here.
I wonder if you could tell us a little more about yourself.
Okay, well, I'll just briefly. So I'm a social entrepreneur. That means I've co-founded businesses in the education sector, and they've so far helped over 1 million people with their skills, their education, and their confidence. And that's I found a really important part of everyone's education. It's building your confidence. And I'm now working on a book which I will publish next year to do with business ethics and showing how to help organizations have a positive, wider effect with ethics at their heart.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I know I was very fortunate to be part of your Visionaires program, which helped me to build my confidence in my business. So I know that this will help a lot of people. Pablo, I wondered, why socialpreneurship? Why did you choose that?
Well, I kind of fell into it by accident, really. The first part of my career, I trained as a finance professional. I was a chartered accountant and finance director for many years. And I joined a startup way back in 1999, 25 years ago, which was a government initiative to help people with literacy and numeracy, people who hadn't succeeded in those skills at school, and effectively got a second chance to improve their writing, their maths, their all aspects of those essential skills. And we worked with what was then new technology. The web was quite new in the late 90s, to spread that across the UK. We worked with partners to provide tutoring. And that introduced me to the world of education, to the world of entrepreneurship, of getting a startup going from scratch, and the ability of a business to really change people's lives. So that's when I realized I was falling into being a social entrepreneur, not a finance professional. And I've found that very rewarding. I've been doing that ever since and have founded 4 businesses since then.
Wow, that's such a fantastic journey, and thank you for sharing that. Going the idea of falling into something and then coming out the other side, recognizing, well, actually, I may have started somewhere, but what I'm now doing is really fulfilling. And in terms of mental health and well-being, how would you describe your mental health and well-being within that journey to where it is now?
Yeah, well, look, it's been a really important backdrop to that whole journey. I mean, right now I'm in a good space. I've worked out. I have a balance of privileges and challenges in my life. And if we're lucky, we all have privileges and skills and talents we can use, and certainly we all have challenges. And I guess I've figured out how to turn all of those things into positives. And I don't think it is an accident that I work in the field of education, because really my lifeboat has been learning. Learning is everything that I'm about. It's everything that's mattered to me. It's everything that's helped me make a difference to other people's lives. And it was certainly a very important part of my childhood where I was really encouraged to focus on my education.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. So what I'm hearing there, that's key, is education and learning.
Yeah.
And within that is the sharing of experiences and knowledge, which has, it sounds like that's been a good grounding for you to move forward and to do the work that you do. What are some of the challenges that you have experienced in regards to mental health or well-being?
Well, I think, probably my greatest challenge has been a challenge, particularly, when I was a teenager and in my 20s, but really all my life, struggling with anxiety and quite powerful anxiety attacks, which at times which made me quite ill, made me stop functioning, and gave me challenges, particularly in my 20s, challenges with my career, with work, with friendships, with relationships. And that was something that really shaped all of my life, and only recently is something that I've been able to come to terms with.
Well, thank you. And for someone who suffers from anxiety, I know you've talked about it's helped to shape you to where you are now. And you also talked previously about channeling things in a positive way. What would you say to someone who's struggling with anxiety?
All I can say, look, I'm not a professional or expert. I'm someone who's just kind of been through it. And I did get help. I tried different therapies. I tried talking therapies, cognitive behavior therapy. I tried hypnotherapy at one stage. I think they kind of helped, but I think in the end, what made a big difference for me was really just confronting my anxieties, making peace with them, having a sense that they were just part of me, that they weren't going to go away completely, that they were part of my life. And by confronting them, by facing challenges like being with people I didn't know, I used to find that really difficult. Things like public speaking, what I'm doing right now, this would have been quite a terrifying ordeal for me a few years ago. Now these are things which I look forward to. And so I feel that it's about living with the anxiety, in my case, about taming it so that you respect it, but work out a way of being able to live with it, and ultimately turning it into positive. So situations I used to find difficult, now I find easy. I look forward to them. I love public speaking. I love these kind of conversations. And it's really in the last 10 or 15 years that I've been able to express myself. And that's been an important part of being an entrepreneur, having the confidence to do that, and working in a field which is all about building other people's confidence, which is kind of what I've experienced, about being able to build mine.
Wow, there's so much that I've picked up in what you've said, and so much that resonates with myself, coming, from a place of also a person who suffered greatly with anxiety. And when you talked about befriending it, making friends with it, and accepting that it's part of you, I think that's something so key. We can spend a lot of time, I certainly did spend a lot of time thinking that it was my identity, in a sense. It sort of took over everything, and then I feel that that's where the fear sort of builds from, because there's an expectation of you should present yourself in one way, however that's not quite marrying up with what's happening. So definitely accepting, that's really key advice. And also what you talked about trying different things, so going to different professionals and being open to trying different things, but ultimately realizing that the fight is with you, and the person who's really going to make that difference or that change is you. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That's so powerful. We've talked about the difficulties and the challenges. Is there any particular areas of success that you would like to celebrate or have celebrated, and why? What's the significance of this?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I realized that I'm not very good at celebrating. I kind of live in the future. I live with the possibilities of what can happen next, and what difference I can make in the future. So those moments where you kind of stop and reflect and think, oh, well, that was good. It's not a natural place. We had a little celebration. You were there the other day.
Yes.
About the work we've done at Visionaires. It was just lovely and really uncomfortable for me. So I think, the success for me is when I see other people succeed, when I feel that I've created something or stimulated something or encouraged somebody to create some positives for them, where they're able to make sense of their lives, make sense of their potential, learn new things, as we were talking about earlier. That's the best feeling for me. And the more I can do, and that's really all I've been doing for the last 20 or so years, is making those things possible. So that's it for me.
Okay, and I hear that, and I remember seeing you, and it was quite a surprise, but definitely seeing some of that uncomfortability. But in knowing also that it's well deserved. Your life was celebrated. The work that you do was very heavily celebrated, and many of the visionaries has really appreciated this opportunity, and to have someone feed into them and build their confidence and say, it's okay, you've got this, and to have that support. We do thank you very much for that, and hopefully at some point you will find it a little bit easier to perhaps live in the present moment.
Yeah, maybe that's my life's work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all have things that we're working on.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for sharing. So the other question I want to ask is about society and culture. And the opinion of others, and how that influences or may have influenced your mental health and well-being.
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting question. I mean, I think it is certainly for me, my experience, that I think a lot of mental health challenges, and in my case, mine, were a lot to do with worrying about how other people saw me, how I was coming across, and I think a big part of my childhood was growing up in a household where I was the son of an immigrant, a war refugee, a mother who'd come over, in her case, from Spain to get away from a terrible civil war in the 1930s. And her family lost everything in that conflict, and they lost relatives as well in that time. So she was in a kind of strange environment, coming to the UK and coming to London in particular. And my father as well, he was an economic migrant. His family had come over from South Wales, where there wasn't work, and his parents came over to London as well. So in different ways, they were kind of forging new life for themselves. And I think growing up with as the son of people who had been effectively displaced from their original culture, and they were creating a new life, and they didn't really have a community to belong to. So for my sisters and for myself, we were the generation that were going to kind of make it all okay. We were, we were encouraged in our education. We were encouraged to go to university, the first generation to do that. But we at the same time had to kind of construct an identity, because we, Britain, I think Britain's a great country, but it also has a very powerful class system. And we didn't have a class. We didn't fit in, And, my kids now say to me, they say, "Oh, Dad, you're posh." And I think, I don't think I'm posh. I don't think that's who I am. I'm just me, So I think a lot of those anxieties are to do with the pressure of fitting in, to the pressure of finding an identity, and kind of seeking out the things that you can build an identity around. That was my experience. And if your culture and the disruption that maybe your family has gone through, and I know that's true of many people, you're trying to create that identity. And for me, it always came back to learning, education, to sort of furthering my own understanding of the world and helping other people do the same, to be useful as well, to be a useful contributor to the world. So that was, as I say, it's kind of like my life belt is that was the heart of the identity I had to create. And I know in different ways it was probably the same for my sisters as well.
Thank you so much. That's, that story and explanation about how, how your culture has created that identity, but also coming from your parents and starting there, and how that influences who you are and how you show up, and ultimately where you are now and the work that you're doing, and really beginning to understand the social impact and what's happening for that person within those expecting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Okay.
And for others, if who may have had similar experiences, I know for myself, I wasn't born in this country. I came here at a very young age, and that has really impacted how I see myself in terms of identity and identifying the expectations that I put upon myself, and how I want to show up, and how that affects the things that I do and my sort of family structure, in a sense. How would you encourage others? What would you say to them, or someone who's gone through similar experiences like yourself or myself?
Yeah. Well, look, it's kind of difficult to generalize, because we're all figuring out that journey and our place in the world. I think when we were setting up Visionaires programs, and what you were part of, and what was wonderful experience for me, seeing people coming in and learning about entrepreneurship, it was kind of an analogy for figuring out yourself, not just your business. And I think what I learned from that is that working out what's important to you, working out what you enjoy, that's an important thing. When I see people starting businesses, if they're not enjoying that, I don't see the point of that. Working out what you're good at, I think that's a really critical thing, because I think everyone has one or more talents that they bring. And sometimes, particularly if you've had tough times, it's you don't always appreciate what talent you have, what you can bring to the world, what you can bring to people you care about, and they turn up and show up in lots of different ways. And I guess I was lucky, because I had a talent for numbers and to study at school. And that was, that became really important for me. And that's how I kind of made my way to kind of build an identity and a kind of work and career around of that. And being able to latch onto that, some people are very caring for other people. I've seen a lot of that with the Visionaires community. And when you have that sense of empathy and care for other people, again, that's a very, very powerful talent to bring to the world. But figuring out what you enjoy, what you're good at, what your talent is. We sometimes talk about, some people like talking about their superpower. That's a nice way of thinking about it. And then once you've done that, and it's never 100% clear. It's always a kind of reaching out for a bit. Something, we tried that out in the early Visionaires programs, and we've had thousands of people go through that process. That seems to work. Then it's about getting the support and the challenge for making that work for you, making it work for people around you, whether it's in your personal life or in your working life. And what we sometimes found is that people can normally get support. People will have friends and family will say, oh, Tans, you're great. What you're doing is fabulous. Sometimes it's harder to find people who will speak honestly with you and say, do you know, I'd have a think about that, whether that's such a good idea, or, that's okay, but it's not great. Maybe that's not going to earn you a living. Having that challenge that is from a place of love and support, that people seeking out and asking those questions, so that people will say what they really think about what you're doing, so you can kind of really sharpen up your ideas, and not just rely on people being kind, because kindness comes in many forms, and sometimes it's about difficult truths. So that support and challenge against your own internal work of what you love, what you enjoy, and what your talent is, I think that's the cocktail that works for me.
Wow. And that sounds amazing. And I love that, the contrast between support and challenge, which again, not many people think about, but you've explained it so beautifully, that challenge is coming from a place of love and support, and that makes it all the better. It makes it that much more, not enjoyable, but I guess the word I'm looking for,
acceptable.
Yeah.
Something you can work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Those are such nuggets of wisdom, and I'm taking that away with me. Thank you. So just coming towards the end of sort of the questioning, in terms of thoughts and actions, you talked about being a social entrepreneur. You've talked about some of the challenges within that, within your personal life, but also how you kind of use that to sort of step your way up. If I were to ask, in terms of actions and thoughts that have impacted your relationships with yourself and others, is there any that comes to your immediate attention or thought?
Yeah, I think I'd go back to what I enjoy and what I have some talent for. And I think the thing we haven't talked about is just being around people. I used to find it difficult to be with people who I didn't know very well, and now I love that. Now I love being with new people. I love kind of dealing with new ideas, new challenges, encouraging other people. So I think that's those relationships which are fresh and new, and you can be good for each other, I think have been very important to me, and has been a big part of the Visionaires community. But also kind of, deeper, important relationships, with my immediate family. I have 2 daughters who I've really encouraged to follow their hearts, and they've done that in their lives. That's sometimes hard to watch. If their hearts are things that you think, why are they doing that? But there's I feel that all of the things we've talked about have kind of played out in my family and my working life. And that feels pretty good. It feels that, I'm just going to keep doing that until somebody tells me to stop.
Right, fair enough. Great. Thank you again for sharing and looking at that dynamic within your family relationship as well. And you talked a little bit about, the parenting side of it, which can be it presents its own challenges, where I guess you have to start to recognize that they become their own person.
They do. They're your children, but they are no longer children. That's the strange place that I find myself in. Now my daughters are grown up. My children, but not children. It's a tough one.
And yes, I agree. It's a very, very tough one, and I'm sure many parents would agree that it's a challenge when it gets to this particular stage of their life. It becomes a challenge. Yeah. But I guess you never stop being a parent as well.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Thank you for sharing that. So you've told us a little bit about some of the plans you have for the future. You've talked about the book that you're planning to write, or in the process of writing, as well as a few other things that you've got in the pipeline. Do you foresee any sort of challenges or successes around those? And how do you plan on addressing or celebrating them?
You're going to make me celebrate, aren't you?
Yes, I
am. Well, look, this year has been a kind of a really a really important year for me, because everything has changed about my working life. I've changed my portfolio. I'm lucky to be involved in a number of different businesses and charities and other initiatives, and they're all to do with education. But I've had to make some difficult choices, stopping some work with two charity and not-for-profit organisations, which I've been involved in for a few years, because I needed to make time for my book writing project. It's that the work of writing a book is a solitary exercise. So I'm learning how to motivate myself when I'm not working with a team and with external pressure and external deadlines. And that's probably my biggest challenge, because it's going too slowly. Some days are frustrating. Yesterday I had a book writing day and I had a really good day and I got through a lot of things. But working
How
solo.
can you celebrate that, I wonder?
Like so how do I celebrate? I'm celebrating right now. I'm telling you. There you're yeah, so it's, I try, I'm looking, I've got a little board in front of me in where I work, and I put things up of what I'm aiming to do, and I kind of tick them off. That's does that count celebration? Yes, when I tick something off? Is that okay? And I am kind to myself. If things I've learned that if things are not working out, if I don't have the inspiration that day, I just stop. I walk the dog. I have a nice meal in the evening, with my wife, and if our kids are around, we meet up with them. That kind of stuff. I'm much better at just allowing those things to happen.
Yes. And
to take a priority over my professional life, which has been pretty heavy duty for many decades. So I think that's another bit of celebration of allowing yourself the kindness of leaving pressure behind, which usually is pressure you've probably made up yourself, and having those moments all through a day where you can just appreciate what you've done, let go of what you hope to do and haven't done, and just be for a while.
Fantastic. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about it, and for you to end with just be for a while, very much, which is very much about the present. It's about letting go. It's about, saying it's okay.
Yeah.
I haven't ticked everything on that list.
Yeah.
But I'm good. The small successes is in that 1 or 2 ticks.
Exactly.
Exactly. And you also talked about change. So going from what you have become used to over decades to now transitioning into a slower pace of life.
Yes. Which
is more about autonomy, but also about advocating for self and self-motivation in that sense. Which completely, I hear you, can be very difficult when you're the one cheerleading.
Yes, exactly.
But it sounds like you have so much wealth of knowledge and wisdom which you have shared with us today. So I am very humble, and and grateful for this opportunity.
It's been such a pleasure. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Tans.
You're welcome. And if anyone wanted to kind of know a little bit more about Pablo, where would be a good place to look?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So there is, as far as I know, there is only one Pablo Hepworth Lloyd. So you go into LinkedIn and there I am.
Okay, wonderful. Once again, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our wonderful guest Pablo for joining us today on the Sassy Beans podcast, and to all our wonderful listeners for staying attuned and showing up and supporting us. We really value you. Until next time, take care, and remember, your health and well-being matters.